In today's diverse workforce, everyone deserves a fair crack at success. So, in this episode, we will be discussing the practicalities of achieving workplace equity and the importance of creating a fair and equitable work environment. To dive a little deeper into this topic, we are fortunate to have a thought leader on workplace equity, the founder and CEO of Equitable, Hamsa Selvam. Hi, Hamza. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Kamran. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's start with a brief introduction of yourself, as well as a little bit about Equitable and the work that you do.
Yeah. So to introduce myself, I'm Hamsa. I'm the founder and CEO of Equitable. My co-founder is Dura, and she's the COO. So prior to Equitable, I'm an experienced management consultant with a decade years of experience, and I specialize in HR consulting and people analytics. Some of my previous employers include Accenture, Deloitte, and PwC, and I've worked with Fortune 500 brands and also regional Asia Pacific clients, enabling them to set up data-driven HR practice in leadership development and also culture transformation kind of projects. So Equitable is actually an early stage startup. It's a tech startup. It's an intuitive multi-source analysis platform that leverages HR data and also external benchmark data and provides insights about workforce such as pay, opportunity gaps, skills gaps, and so on. So businesses typically use these insights to not only do financial planning, workforce planning, but also drive workforce happiness, improve talent retention, improve productivity, and ultimately achieve business performance. And the key here is we do all of this without impacting bottom line profitability. So our vision in general is to democratize people analytics for HR.
Right, appreciate the intro, Hamza. So today we're discussing workplace equity, right? But first, many people, they often use workplace equity and workplace equality interchangeably. But from my understanding, there are distinct differences between the two. So the nuances here can be a little bit confusing. Maybe you could shed some light on how each concept is different.
Yes. So I think it's understandable that sometimes equity and equality is, kind of interchanged, but there is very clear distinct difference between the two. So equality is about and in a work-based context, equality is about every employee being given the same resource and opportunity. It's sort of like one size fits all approach, whereas equity is about recognizing the difference and circumstances of different groups and also making sure that everyone can be enabled to have equal access to opportunities within the organization, equal access to pay at workplace. So for example, equality is saying that every employee needs to, be at the office 9 to 5 to deliver a particular project milestone. So there'll be no special permissions or concessions given. There'll be no special treatments, which if you think about it, sounds okay. Sounds fair to me. But from an equity standpoint, right, take one particular demographics like caregiver lens, right? It's making sure that or understanding and recognizing that this particular employee has caregiving responsibilities, so he's given a special sort of like a flexibility to choose when they choose to work and also at what time they resume their work, as long as they are delivering and achieving that project milestone. So obviously, like, you need to have clear communication in place in order to make sure that this person's quality of deliverable is really good, and all of these things needs to be ensured on the side. The equity is about recognizing the difference and also giving them that flexibility and autonomy to deliver things, as long as their performance remains, awesome as usual. So the point I'm trying to make is this does not mean that equality does not matter or it doesn't have any values, because employees need to be treated equally in very critical areas such as like performance management. And, when people are doing performance reviews and, they go on these one-to-one kind of catch-ups, regardless of people's identity, they need to be evaluated equally on the certain previously set criteria and dimensions. So there, no special preference is given, right? So some organizations tend to promote certain, groups labeled as diversity, but that also has counterintuitive results because it doesn't motivate the rest of employees. And imagine if that person, figures out that they have been promoted on the diversity quota, like how does that make that person feel, right? So those are sort of like the subtle differences between equality and equity.
Based on what you just said, is it correct to say in a nutshell that equity, workplace equity is the big picture, workplace equality is just one component of it?
Um, We don't necessarily have to look at it as two different things. They are also interlinked with each other. So equity is a principle, equality is also a principle, and they can coexist. They are not mutually, exclusive as well. So in a way, how we are trying to position, or how the reality also is in areas where certain critical decisions are also being made, right? Equality, where no difference in treatment is expected. That so it also comes down to the judgment of the person who's and the decision making level also. Like, is this where you're expected to take that special level of judgment? Is this where you're expected to recognize the difference? So it also depends on a case by case kind of a analysis.
Right. So let's talk about implementation or the lack of, right? So what specific factors that often hinder organizations from enabling workplace equity? Is it like a lack of awareness or mindset, or are there any other barriers that we're not seeing?
Yeah, I would actually categorize this into four different areas: people, process, technology, and policies, right? So starting with policies, in a lot of geographic areas, there are laws in place that ensures that companies need to pay people equally. So in a lot of countries, even like 40 or 45 years ago, laws have been established to say that employees are entitled to have equal pay work. But the issues like gender pay gap or other demographic pay gaps continue to persist despite those laws being in place for employee protection. But going back to your point, one of the key policies that have been driving change in Europe and also the US has been the regulation around reporting the gender pay gap statistics. Now, I think that is a really good move because that's a move towards transparency. And when, it is tied to the employer branding and also the organizational reputation, then people start to take it a bit more seriously, as opposed to when employees tend to sue employers for, treating them differently. And then it's all in a hush hush and backdoor kind of a treatment. Then that's a completely different story, as opposed to employers being voluntarily or even meeting the regulatory requirements that they end up, preparing their gender pay gap reports as part of their sustainability reporting and whatnot, right? So from a policy lens, lack of these legislative requirements around this part of the world, I think, is probably one of the biggest reasons why, or is probably one of the biggest challenge, I would say, in terms of not systemically ensuring workplace equity. And then the second lens that if we look at this is the people side of things. The mindset is still in such a way that if people were to talk about workplace equity at an organizational level, then automatically the leaders' defense guards go up. Like, what do you mean we are an equitable organization? Yes, in general, we provide equitable access to pay and access to opportunities and things like that. So their defense mechanism really kicks in. And then there is this leadership mindset, like non-leadership mindset, where the peers tend to downplay some of these issues as well. What do you mean by gender pay gap? I know a lot of high-paid women, within my organization. So it's that lack of awareness at multiple levels. It's the leadership mindset, the denial versus acknowledging that the issue exists kind of a scenario. So that's the people side of lens, I would say. And then the third element is the technology, the data that is required to measure these things and, close the gaps, and sustaining that change is probably not available. And that's a triple threat, right? So if we take data, it's firstly, it's inconsistent. Not enough data has been collected, probably for more, anonymity element as well, because a lot of people are generally, if they see a checkbox that says, I do not want to indicate any information, then they would be more than happy to check that box and go away. And also, if you think about it, previously, the only thing that, HR and, decided to collect were around whether you're a male or a female, because primarily your benefits depended on your gender identity and the type of and it's always associated with, okay, if this is a woman, then you can expect this person to go on a maternity break at some point in time, or so on and so forth. Childcare responsibilities are automatically assumed that the woman is the one who's going to be doing all of these things. But there is just so many more components within the gender that people have started to declare as well. And also there's other demographic elements apart from gender, which is the ethnicity. People might be coming from different ethnicities like Asia or Africa or India or whatever, but then they grow up in a completely different geographic location and they no longer identify themselves as this. And that's true because ethnicity is not necessarily race. So that's the huge distinction between that as well. So all of these dimensions of diversity comes into play, and not all of these data points are being collected. And then if the data exists, then it exists in multiple other systems, so it resides in probably 10 other tech stacks, right? So these systems don't necessarily talk to each other, and if HR wants to derive any policies, then there's ending up spending so much manual hours consolidating the data and reviewing this information to come up with different insights to present to the stakeholders, gain their sponsorship, and go about bringing the change that's required for their employees. So those are probably the 4 big areas of challenges I would kind of highlight when it comes to tackling workplace equity.
You at the start you mentioned legislation, right? So I feel in order to accelerate the understanding, awareness, and the implementation of workplace equity, instead of just waiting for governments to do something about it, I think industries should actually start the ball rolling. Then, of course, enacting it or coming up with the legislation, working closely with the government to actually put things in place will be a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, that is also the trend, right? Like public policies are often not designed in such a way where they lead the way and everybody else catch up to them. Technology leads the way. Organization starts to set the trend, and then the public policies catch up. Like that has been something at least I have been noticing for the last few, the trends of the last few decades as well. So you're absolutely right. I think industries need to start publishing these things voluntarily and, set the trend that, which industry is faring better. And then it also gives the opportunity for upcoming generations to also make their pick as to what type of employers do they want to work for. Everything is digital driven these days. And if people who are choosing their future employees, because it's a talent-driven market at the moment, not the employer-driven market, right? So if people want to choose what type of employers they want to work for, and all they end up finding is, really not favorable feedback across like Glassdoor or any other such platforms, then the employers also lose control of attracting really talented, high potential talent from the market as well. So I think it really makes sense for industries to take charge into their hands. And I think most of the organizations, some of the, even the Fortune 500 ones, they make it a point to disclose all of these information as part of the annual reports anyway. But it's not something that's easily available for public to see. If you were to Google an organization saying we are able to see their net worth, we are able to see the headcount, at some level, and we're able to see the headquarters. What we need to aim for is for organizations when people are doing a search for the organization, it needs to show up like whether they are, friendly, diversity friendly, and whether they're equitable employer of choice, or if they have achieved equal pay status and have been continuing to do so over the last few years. So if these type of information start to show up, I think that's success in itself.
Right. So workplace equity discussions are gaining traction globally, but I'd like to narrow the focus to Asia since we're in this part of the world. So from your experience so far, how do you evaluate the state of equitable practices in our region, or even Southeast Asia for the matter? Are you seeing a positive trajectory?
I'd say there are a few metrics that we can obviously use to measure like workplace equity, right? So in some of the common metrics that all of these legislative requirements that I was talking about previously, some of the metrics they ask for is representation, like headcount. But all of this is coming from gender lens. They haven't yet triggered to other dimensions that we also touched upon, right? So from a gender lens, people talk about representation, board level representation, leadership or managerial level representation, equal pay for equal value jobs, and also unadjusted gender pay gap and adjusted gender pay gap. So these are some of the metrics that we typically use to measure. And apart from that, at a policy level, we also look at is there availability for flexible working options for caregivers, people with disabilities and those sort of things. So those are some of the metrics. And in this part of the world, I feel like at least in Singapore, the adjusted gender pay gap was 6%. It's also low when compared with the results for similar studies and for US, which is at 8%. For Canada is like 7.7 to like 8% again. And China is 18.3%. So this was the 2023 report by the MOI, Ministry of Manpower in Singapore, gender pay gap, right? So I think when MOM did this report back in 2002, the adjusted gender pay gap number is 8.8. And when I say adjusted gender pay gap, they basically adjust the pay gaps for different factors like, educational background and also number of years of experience. And, if people have certain certifications and, whatnot. So basically that is what they mean by adjusted gender pay gap. So I think in New Zealand, it's reported as 8.6% in 2023, the unadjusted gender pay gap. So I think it is a progress in a way. Even though it's at 6%, it still exists. It's not like it's non-existent, but it's definitely progress when compared to so many years ago when people didn't act.
Yeah, okay. At least there is science that is heading in the right direction, right? So
yeah, and that is even in the absence of any legal requirements saying that you need to disclose or close your gender pay gaps and things like that.
All right, now I want to look at this topic from an external perspective. Today, customer experience matters, right? Businesses are investing a lot on trying to improve their customer experience. Without the right customer experience, obviously, you're going to struggle with retention, even drive away your existing customers. How does enhancing workplace equity actually impact customer experience positively when you make your people feel a lot more appreciated? And does it translate well for a business to improve its customer experience?
Absolutely. I would say improving workplace equity means your workforce is generally becoming more happier. Happy employees equals happy customers, right? So that is undeniable connection. And if you think about it, why do employees end up being unhappy in a company? What are some of the reasons that employees choose to quit a company for? The top 3 reasons being unfair pay, or they don't have enough career advancement opportunities, and then toxic work culture, right? So if we think about all of these instances, and one of the important ways to boost employee happiness is by improving workplace equity, like making sure that people are getting paid equally for the same contribution that they do, like being in the same job level, setting that equitable starting salary for people who are starting out in the same job level and job title, right? So addressing that with equal pay and making sure that people are identified and given opportunities for the skill sets that they bring to the table. So this is definitely one of the most straightforward way to ensure that your workforce is remaining happy. It's not just big paycheck that is going to make the multi-generational workforce happy anymore. And in one of these surveys that was done by, I think, Monster, it says that what motivates millennials is not necessarily the same thing that motivates Gen Zers and whatever generation it comes after, and also like the other generations that have been before. Like higher pay was probably the highest priority for the previous generation, but for millennials, it is actually the flexibility to choose when and how they, do their work. So understanding all of these multi-generational workforce is already going to be a big sort of task at hand, and making sure that the policies are framed in such a way that they have equitable access to pay and opportunities is definitely going to make them happier and contributing to positive customer experience.
Okay, so this was an interesting discussion. I mean, it's a complex subject, I must say, but you've given us a lot of insights and at least provided a better understanding of workplace equity as a whole. Thank you very much, Hamsa. Hope we can speak again in future on other trending workplace issues. I'm sure there's
Thank you so much. Thanks for giving me the chance to, share my thoughts and also my opinions and draws the patiently listening to take.
I hope this episode provided some clarity on the importance of workplace equity and how it creates a level of fairness in organizations. Please check out cxpose.tech on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, and our website cxpose.tech. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you again in our next episode with more tech and more talk.